There are two ways a soldier can be left to die. The first is on an open battlefield where the enemy numbers are too high and the extraction choppers cannot land. That is a tragedy of war. The second way is far worse. It happens when the person holding the tactical map, the person who whispered that they loved you before the mission started, deliberately turns off their radio, locks the grid coordinates, and walks away with the payroll. That is not a tragedy. That is an execution. 6 years ago, I was a young captain assigned to a highly classified joint agency task force operating along the lawless border regions of Southeast Asia. Our mission was to track and intercept a ghost network of international arms brokers who were smuggling stolen American missile guidance software onto the black market. It was a black ops mission. No support. No registration. If we failed, the government would deny our existence. My tactical partner and the man I had been living with for 2 years was Julian Vance. Julian was a brilliant but deeply cynical logistics contractor. He possessed a silver tongue, an expensive apartment in Washington, and an insatiable desire for a life of luxury that a government salary could never provide. I thought he shared my sense of duty. I thought the ring he had placed on my finger meant honor. Pause for 6 seconds. On a rain-drenched midnight in the jungle, our operative safehouse was compromised. 30 heavily armed mercenaries surrounded the perimeter. The walls were being torn apart by 50 caliber rounds. Shrapnel was flying through the dark, cutting our power lines. I was trapped behind a concrete barrier, firing my primary weapon, holding the choke point alone while Julian was supposed to secure the encrypted server drive containing our data and open the rear escape hatch. I looked back through the smoke. I saw Julian holding the server drive, a piece of technology worth $40 million to foreign buyers. He didn't open the hatch for me. He stepped through it alone. I will never forget the look in his eyes through the cracked glass of the security door. There was no panic. There was no sorrow. There was only the cold, calculated look of a businessman who had just traded his fiancé's life for a clean escape and a multi-million-dollar paycheck from the syndicate. He locked the heavy steel reinforcement bar from the outside, cutting off my only exit. He took the only survival vehicle, left the sector, and reported to headquarters that Captain Sarah Hayes had been killed in action. Pause for 5 seconds. But the jungle is a poor place to bury a soldier. I didn't die in that room. I used my last remaining thermite grenade to burn through the steel floor plating, dropped into the mud of the drainage tunnels beneath the safe house, and crawled through 3 miles of hostile territory with a broken collarbone and a bullet wound in my left thigh. It took me 4 days to reach the perimeter of an Allied embassy. When I finally survived and returned to Washington, the betrayal was fully complete. Julian had vanished. He had resigned from the agency, claimed a massive corporate bonus, and laundered the stolen server data through a network of shell companies. I tracked him to a high-end luxury lounge in Georgetown on the night before he fled the country to Europe. He was surrounded by beautiful women, drinking $1,000 champagne, celebrating his new life as a private defense tycoon. I walked into that lounge drenched in rain, my uniform stained with dried mud, my arm bound in a tight medical splint. Julian didn't even look guilty when he saw me standing by his table. He stood up, adjusted his silk blazer, and looked at me with an expression of aristocratic contempt. "Look at you, Sarah," he whispered, tossing a stack of $100 bills onto the table so the hostesses could hear him. "You're just a field grunt. You're a low-class soldier who smells like gun oil and swamp water. You thought we were partners? I used your tactical security clearance to get inside that server room. You were just my shield. Go back to your barracks, collect your cheap Purple Heart, and stay in the mud where you belong. I am a billionaire now. You have absolutely zero leverage. Pause for 7 seconds. His security guards surrounded me, their hands on their holstered weapons, pushing me out into the cold street. I stood in the dark, watching his luxury sports car speed away into the neon lights of the city. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a rage so pure it felt like boiling lead in my veins. Julian Vance thought he had left me in the mud. He thought that by locking a door, he had stolen my destiny. He forgot that a soldier who survives an execution doesn't go to the police. She goes to war. For 6 long years, I became the shadow that followed his currency. I didn't sue him. I didn't report his theft to the standard civilian authorities, who were too slow, too corrupt, and too easily blinded by Julian's high-priced legal teams. Instead, I vanished into the deepest, most lethal branch of the military establishment, JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command, Tactical Financial Intelligence Division. We are the black ops of the auditing world. We do not look at taxes. We hunt the finances of international terrorists, rogue private military corporations, and traders who sell American defense secrets to foreign entities. I didn't stay a captain. I worked 20 hours a day. I tracked weapons shipments across Africa, intercepted cyber currency transfers in Eastern Europe, and climbed the ladder until I became a major. I became the director of the Ghost Interdiction Task Force. I was no longer sitting behind a desk in a dress uniform. My office was a tactical command bunker, and my tools were satellite surveillance arrays, federal seizure warrants, and a Tier 1 direct action raid team. Pause for 5 seconds. Meanwhile, Julian Vance's empire grew like a cancer. He founded Vance Cybernetics and Tactical Logistics, a massive private security firm based in a heavily fortified, multi-million-dollar compound on a private island off the coast of Maine. He wore $5,000 custom suits, owned yachts in Monaco, and vlogged about his invincible global tech fortress. He was selling advanced drone tracking systems to foreign oligarchs, using the very code he had stolen from my jungle safehouse 6 years ago. He believed he was a god. He believed his private island and his small army of highly paid mercenaries made him sovereign. But arrogance is a terminal disease in the intelligence world. Julian became so confident in his immunity that he agreed to broker a massive black market transaction, selling the source code for the U.S. military's next-generation satellite encryption matrix to a hostile foreign intelligence syndicate. The price tag was $200 million. The exchange was scheduled to take place on his private island, routed through his secure mainframe servers on a Tuesday midnight. He thought his network was untraceable. He thought the Pentagon was blind. He didn't know that for 6 years, every single email he sent, every bank account he opened, and every mercenary he hired had been logged into a master database sitting inside my tactical tablet. Pause for 6 seconds. June 2026. Joint Special Operations Command Center, Fort Bragg. The room was bathed in dim blue light. On the massive central projection screen, real-time thermal satellite images of Julian's private island compound were spinning in crisp 3-dimensional geometry. 20 elite operators from the Army's Delta Force stood in the shadows, fully geared in black combat equipment, holding their suppressed weapons, waiting for my command. I wasn't wearing my polished dress green uniform today. I didn't have gold pins or colorful parade ribbons on my chest. I was wearing my rugged digital OCP camouflage combat uniform. My sleeves were rolled up tightly past my elbows, exposing the thick scar on my left arm from the shrapnel 6 years ago. I wore a black heavy-duty tactical plate carrier vest strapped tight across my torso. A sleek communication headset was wrapped around my neck, and a high-tech tactical tablet was locked into my hand. My face was smudged with dark gray carbon grease from the pre-flight checks. I looked at the thermal image of Julian sitting in his luxury office on the screen, drinking scotch, waiting for his $200 million wire transfer to arrive. I reached down and clicked the tactical radio link to the stealth transport choppers idling on the tarmac outside. "This is Major Hayes," I said, my voice dropping into a freezing, absolute calm that made the hardened operators in the room straighten their backs. "The target has initiated the illegal data transfer. The treason is fully documented. Launch the birds. We are going to go clean out his fortress. The elite operators of the shadow world do not knock on the front door. We do not issue civil warnings, and we do not wait for a convenient time to strike. When a traitor compromises national security for a foreign paycheck, the reckoning doesn't arrive in an envelope. It arrives from the sky, wrapped in midnight camouflage, moving with the silent, terrifying speed of a hunting falcon. The storm over the coast of Maine was fierce, blowing frozen salt water across my face as I unhooked my tactical line from the stealth transport chopper. Around me, 20 Delta Force operators moved like ghosts in the dark, their night vision goggles glowing a faint, eerie green in the midnight mist. We breached the outer perimeter of Julian Vance's private island compound in less than 40 seconds. His highly paid private mercenaries, huddled inside their heated guard shacks, never saw the shadows slipping through the security grid. They had no idea that their expensive motion sensors and perimeter cameras had been completely frozen by the cyber warfare team sitting back at Fort Bragg. Pause for 6 seconds. I walked at the center of the stack, my hands wrapped tight around the grip of my tactical carbine rifle, my eyes scanning the high-glass windows of the main server fortress. Inside that glowing palace of glass and steel, Julian Vance was sitting behind his mahogany desk, laughing with his foreign buyers, watching a progress bar on his encrypted monitor reach 90%. He was 10 minutes away from finalizing the sale of America's satellite encryption codes. He thought his private island made him a king. He thought his wealth made him sovereign. "Breach team in position at the primary server sector," the Alpha lead whispered into my communication headset, his voice a low, mechanical rasp over the encrypted frequency. "Charges set on the structural glass. Awaiting command, Major." I adjusted my tactical vest, feeling the heavy steel of the federal execution warrants pressed against my chest beneath the armor plates. I took one deep, freezing breath of the ocean air, letting the memory of that muddy jungle safe house 6 years ago fill my veins with pure concrete resolve. "Blow the glass," I commanded, my voice dropping into an absolute, chilling calm. "Execute." Pause for 5 seconds. The world exploded into a brilliant flash of white light and shattering glass. The heavy, reinforced windows of Julian's multi-million-dollar office disintegrated into a million diamond-like shards under the force of the tactical breaching charges. The concussive blast threw his corporate bodyguards to the floor, their weapons sliding across the polished marble. Before the smoke could even clear, flashbang grenades detonated inside the room with a series of deafening roars, blinding the foreign operatives and filling the air with the thick, acrid smell of burning magnesium and cordite. The Delta operators flooded the room, lasers cutting through the smoke, their suppressed rifles clicking sharply as they secured the room. "Federal agents, nobody move! Get on the floor! Hands behind your heads!" Julian Vance was thrown backward out of his leather chair by the blast, coughing violently, his $5,000 custom suit covered in gray ash and broken glass. He scrambled on his hands and knees, his eyes wild with terror, trying to reach the emergency delete button on his desk mainframe. I stepped through the shattered frame of the window, my heavy tactical boots crushing the glass beneath my feet with a slow, deliberate crunch. I raised my weapon, the red laser dot of my sight settling directly onto the center of his forehead. "Step away from the keyboard, Julian," I said, my voice echoing through the ruined office like the tolling of a funeral bell. "The perimeter is locked. Your network belongs to me now." Julian Vance froze on the floor, his hands shaking violently as he looked up through the drifting smoke. He blinked rapidly, his vision clearing as he stared at my digital OCP camouflage uniform, the heavy tactical plate carrier vest, and the dark gray carbon grease smudged across my cheekbones. He looked at the Major's oak leaves pinned to my collar, and then his eyes locked onto my face. The color left his skin so violently he looked like a corpse sitting in the rubble. His mouth opened, but no sound came out for 5 long seconds. The absolute, untouchable billionaire tycoon of the defense sector was reduced to a trembling, terrified animal on the floor. Pause for 7 seconds. "Sarah?" Julian finally gasped, his voice cracking into a high-pitched, desperate whisper. No, this is impossible. You're dead. You died in the jungle 6 years ago. I saw the reports." "The reports were written by a coward who locked a security door from the outside, Julian," I said, lowering my weapon slightly but keeping my eyes drilled into his soul. "But the jungle didn't want me. I crawled out of the mud just to make sure I could be here tonight, to personally audit your enterprise." Julian's foreign buyers were already handcuffed against the wall by the Delta operators. His lead corporate attorney, who had been hiding under the sofa, crawled out, his hands shaking as he pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket. "Major, whoever you are, you can't do this. This is private property. This island is outside of standard military jurisdiction. We have international maritime protection. You are executing an illegal military invasion." I didn't even look at the lawyer. I pulled my high-tech tactical tablet from my vest and tapped the screen, routing an encrypted document directly to the main wall monitor that survived the blast. Pause for 6 seconds. "This is an emergency Title 10 National Security Execution Warrant," I announced, my voice carrying the unyielding authority of the Pentagon. "Signed by the President of the United States and the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Your international maritime protection is void, Counselor. Your client has just attempted to transfer classified defense algorithms to a foreign syndicate during an active state of military readiness. This isn't a civil audit. This is an active treason interdiction." Julian scrambled to his feet, wiping the sweat and blood from his forehead, his expensive silk tie torn and ruined. He tried to reach for his desk phone, his voice turning frantic, high society arrogance twisting into pathetic begging. "Sarah, wait! Listen to me! We were a team, remember? We were going to build an empire together. I only left you behind because I thought you had an escape route. I swear, I'll give you the $200 million. It's already in the offshore accounts. I'll transfer the entire syndicate payoff to you right now. You can retire a multi-millionaire. Nobody has to know about this raid." 6 years ago, Julian, you threw a stack of $100 bills at my boots in a lounge in Georgetown, I said, walking closer until the muzzle of my rifle was inches from his face, my voice dropping to a freezing whisper that made his breath catch in his throat. "You told me I was just a field grunt who smelled like gun oil and swamp water. You told me to go back to my barracks and stay in the mud because I had zero leverage." I reached down to my tactical belt, pulled out a thick, heavy set of steel military handcuffs, and threw them onto the desk in front of him. "Well, this is my leverage," I stated coldly. "The mud has come to your private island, Julian, and it is about to swallow your entire multi-billion-dollar life." The corporate empire of Vance Cybernetics did not survive the night. As the sun began to rise over the stormy Atlantic horizon, casting a pale gray light over the private island, 3 United States naval destroyers dropped anchor just off the coast. A fleet of tactical federal vessels swarmed the private marina, landing over 100 armed agents from the Department of Justice and the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. Julian Vance was marched out of his glass fortress in broad daylight, his hands securely locked in steel military handcuffs, his head bowed as federal agents loaded him into the rear of a secure transport vehicle. He didn't look like a billionaire defense tycoon anymore. He looked like a broken, exposed criminal who had traded his honor for a currency that could no longer save him. Pause for 6 seconds. 6 months later, following a top-secret federal trial behind closed doors at the United States District Court, Julian Vance was convicted of high treason, espionage against the United States government, and major procurement fraud. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, stripped of every corporate asset, every offshore account, and every piece of property he owned. His private island was seized under federal forfeiture laws and converted into a highly secure, restricted naval communication outpost. The multi-million-dollar tech empire he built on stolen data was entirely dismantled, its servers wiped clean, its codes returned to the classified vaults of the Pentagon where they belonged. Pause for 5 seconds. Yesterday, I returned to that same remote border region in Southeast Asia. I wasn't carrying a rifle this time, and there were no mercenaries waiting in the dark. I walked through the overgrown jungle path until I found the ruins of that old operative safehouse. The concrete walls were covered in green vines, and the rain had washed away the scars of the bullets from 6 years ago. I stood in the quiet green light of the jungle, looking at the rear escape hatch, the door Julian had locked to leave me to die. I reached into my pocket, pulled out his expensive gold-plated luxury watch, the one item the federal marshals had handed to me from his seized personal effects, and I dropped it into the deep, dark mud beneath the drainage platform. I watched it sink into the black earth until it vanished completely from sight. The narcissists and traders of this world believe that success is a calculation of profit and loss. They believe that if they can betray the people who trust them, steal their work, and hide behind walls of gold, they are invincible. They look at your loyalty, your discipline, and your service, and they think you are just a tool to be discarded when the payoff is high enough. They don't understand that a soldier's strength doesn't come from a bank account. It comes from the ability to survive the execution, to walk through the jungle with a broken bone, and to wait for the perfect alignment of tactical justice and time. Pause for 6 seconds. If you are listening to this story and someone you loved or trusted has abandoned you in your dark hour, if a toxic partner or a corrupt colleague has used your clearance to climb their mountain and left you to take the fall, do not waste your breath shouting at their closed doors. Do not lower yourself to fight their petty civilian battles. You just survive. You heal your wounds. You climb into the quiet, unshakable positions of real authority. You become the master of the map. Because one day, their greed will force them to cross into your territory. They will look up from their screens, and they will find you standing on their horizon, wrapped in steel, delivering the absolute truth in perfect, beautiful silence. I am Major Sarah Hayes, and the perimeter is permanently secure.